David Lloyd George served as the Prime Minister of Great Britain during most of World War I. Though he was born in 1863 in Manchester, he spent most of his life in Wales and represented Carnarvon boroughs in Parliament. His early career in Parliament as a member of the Liberal Party, beginning in April of 1890, included speaking in opposition to the Boer War, education reform, and crafting Britain's modern warfare state after having visited Germany in 1908. His National Insurance Act of 1911, called the People's Budget, provided for social insurance financed by land and income taxes. So he's kind of like the Bernie Sanders of his time. When the Prime Minister at the time, Herbert Henry Asquith, announced Britain's interest into the war on August 4th, 1914, Lloyd George remained Chancellor of the Exchequer through the early years of the World War I.
In 1915, David Lloyd George was appointed Minister of Munitions, and in the following year, in July, he was appointed Secretary of State for War, after his predecessor, Lord Kitchener's death. David Lloyd George, along with several other members of the War Cabinet, were becoming less and less confident in Asquith's ability to lead. His leadership had become increasingly stale and crusty. So, in December 1916, David Lloyd George replaced Asquith as Prime Minister with support from both the Labour and Conservative parties. I mean, who would want to be led by somebody named Asquith? What kind of name is that? David Lloyd George's biggest concerns were in protecting the nation from starving to death, as German U-boat attacks on British food supply ships were becoming more and more frequent. To combat this, he introduced the food rationing system in 1918. The food rationing system essentially meant less num-nums for the small boys in the trench. The system did its job, allowing David Lloyd George to turn his attention away from Britain and towards the less optimistic battlefronts. Though Sir William Robertson and Sir Douglas Haig, both military commanders, insisted that the war could only be won through the Western Front, David Lloyd George did not feel the same.
Their continued disagreements forced our baby boy, Sir Robertson, to turn in his resignation that February. Luckily, the war would end in the November of the same year, after the armistice was signed at Compiègne. As a member of the Big Four during the Paris Peace Conference, Lloyd George often found himself uncomfortable with the harsh measures of French Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau and Italian Prime Minister Vittorio Ciabatta d'Orlando proposed against Germany, including the reparations that would eventually destroy the nation's economy. While he favored President Woodrow Racist Wilson's benevolent stance more, he would later say that he was satisfied with the conference's final product, the Treaty of Versailles, claiming that he did the best he could while negotiating with Wilson, who he compared to Jesus Christ, and Clemenceau, who he fittingly nicknamed Napoleon.